What's up, everyone? Best Available Podcast, episode 43. It is June 1st. Memorial Day weekend has just passed. Matt, not the nicest Memorial Day weekend we've ever had here in the great state of New Jersey, but at least we were able to salvage it yesterday with one nice day. So, of course, we honor those who sacrificed their lives. Of course, that's the point of Memorial Day. I still saw some people kind of getting that mixed up, but just try to get people as educated as possible. Matt, how was your Memorial Day weekend? I know, of course, it did rain, so we couldn't fully enjoy it, but we did have that one nice day.
Well, Ryan, I spent the most amount of time outside on the worst possible weather day on Saturday. I watched a soccer team, Ryan, the one that I work for those who don't know, FC Monmouth, score 11 goals on another team, which for those who might not know how absurd that is, usually when a team scores 4 or 5 or 6 goals, that's usually a really big scoring or high-scoring game. I watched 11 in the pouring rain and the wind. It felt like Ryan, we were getting ready for like senior day for football, right? 48 degrees. Mind you, this is by the shore. 48 degrees. 30-mile-an-hour wind gusts, not a single blue sky peeking through at all. The weather was miserable, but it was still cool. And I know you, I can't remember if you appreciate those kind of cooler weather days, the gloomy kind of days outside, like for the vibes and stuff, but I enjoyed it. In any case, it felt like November. It did not feel like May 31st.
I appreciate those kinds of days. I don't appreciate them on May 28th and 29th and 30th. It was unseasonably cold. Like I had to throw on sweatpants. I had to throw on a hoodie just sitting in the house, which I think is a little much for this time of year. But hopefully I think we're going to finally get past that. I was looking at the weather. Now we're going to kind of get that nice early summer weather, which is exciting. It's very good for our mini golf match, which is going to happen eventually between myself and Glen. There's a lot of slander going on, but as I said in the last podcast episode, all that really matters at the end of the day, when I win, all that matters is just, we all had a good time with the boys. That's all that matters. Just get out there, hit a little ball around the course, go get some food afterwards. That's really the big winner of the day will be the group chat for getting together for the first time in a year and a half. That's what I think we need to remember.
Yeah, but I don't think you realize who you're going up against, Ryan, and just the golf legend that is Glen. And he mentioned yesterday, too, that the gallery is going to be behind him. And listen, I know we do a podcast and own a website together, but I might be pulling for Glen. I don't know. It's like watching Tiger Woods go to work. It's impressive. Yeah, you got to watch, man. He said you're not even going to come in second, which I think speaks volumes of his confidence level going into the match.
I think just like when he tried to get ahead of himself with his basketball team going up against my basketball team, I think he just needs to worry about himself when he's out on the course and not worry about what everybody else is going to do.
But where's the fun in that, Ryan? He's
He's in for a very rude awakening the day that we go to the exciting mini golf match that I've been promoting for a couple of months now. I'm very excited. We're going to get it definitely up on the YouTube channel. We're going to vlog it. We're going to get some nice video footage of when I win, when the ball goes in the cup on hole 18. I think that'll be a lot of fun.
Well, who's going to record it? Because I'm the official scorekeeper.
I'm going to record it. I have a nice little I just ordered from B&H. It's called a switch pod. It's a nice, handheld tripod. I can also just put it down like at the end of the hole, get some cool footage that way. So, yeah, we don't need anybody necessarily special to record. I can multitask, believe it or not. So, I mean, I could honestly just have the switch pod in one hand with the camera and then just hit the ball with the club in my other hand, and I could still win that way.
Are we getting the Goodyear blimp to fly overhead and get some good aerial shots of this mini golf course, or is that not in the budget yet?
That's unfortunately, maybe that'll be 2022. We have the budget for that. Unfortunately, this time around, we're going to be a little bare bones. But as I said, At the end of the day, the winner will just be all of us in the group chat, myself, Glenn, you, and Zach, because we're obviously going to do this on a nice day. So it'll be a nice day outside. We're going to be able to just be together again for the first time in a long time. So we're all going to be the ultimate winners. But I'm actually going to win the match. But anyway, we're going to move on to the NBA. We're going to start with NBA. I said that we wouldn't talk about it a lot last week because things really hadn't happened yet. Well, there's a lot of things that have happened since then. I don't want to talk about the fans. I think that's been beaten to, that's been talked about a lot, and for good reason. I think the fans, it seems like some of them have forgotten how to act in a public setting, but the media has talked about that a lot. So let's focus kind of on the actual games. We'll start in the Eastern Conference. Your boys won a game, and now it seems like because they won a game, Brooklyn kind of went into their kind of like FU mode, and they have just completely blown the doors off of the Celtics. So can you steal another game, or are you expecting to lose by like 40 again?
Well, first, I'm glad we're not going to talk about the fans too much, Ryan, because that's basically, the whole point of them doing that stuff is to get on SportsCenter and to get coverage. So if anyone wants to see a good quote, I thought Kevin Durant said it best. Everyone's kind of inside the house for a year and a half, but it's no way to act at a game. So I think Durant kind of look for his full quote, by the way. People are just tweeting out a sentence or two from his quote. His full quote says a lot. But in terms of the game, Ryan, no Kemba Walker, no Rob Williams. Congratulations to Noah Purcell, Zach Cosenza, anyone else who's a Nets fan out there. You beat a team that was missing two of its top five players and has never been healthy really all year. So I got the Bruins. That's how I'm spinning it, Ryan. I have the Bruins. And the Celtics, I think there's a lot of things they could do in the offseason, what they should do to try and improve. I think they need to get older, and I think they need to get healthier. So congratulations to the Nets. You beat a 7 seed. I don't know what else to say.
I think the Nets, I will say this, I've seen the Nets fan base, not the people that you mentioned, but just in general. I get it. You can be happy that your team's doing well. I'm happy that the Sixers are up 3-1, but they still have to win 12 more games to win the title. Like, this isn't the Eastern Conference Finals. This is round number 1. So I think we kind of, as I said, it's good. It's fun to be excited. It's fun to be optimistic when your team is doing well, but let's just dial it back a little bit. As you said, the Celtics, this is not the Boston Celtics that we kind of expected at the start of the season. The roster looks completely different, as you said, due to injuries and due to other issues as well. So let me ask you this, because I've seen talk about Brad Stevens, I've seen talk about Danny Ainge, I've seen talk about the roster. How do you feel long-term about the Celtics' vision? Are you confident that they can kind of right the ship going into next year?
I mean, yeah, you got to remember half the guys had COVID, number one. Number two, one of our best players is rehabbing a knee injury the whole year, didn't play any back-to-back games, and he's still, getting rest, that being Kemba Walker. Another guy, Jaylen Brown, got hurt. He's out for the rest of the year. And Tatum, as I mentioned, our best player, had COVID and took a while for him to get his lungs back. I like Brad Stevens. I like Danny Ainge. I think what they need to do is, I appreciate the youth movement that this team has. It's one of the more younger teams that you'll see, but I think what should be really talked about in the offseason is adding depth in the front court. It's something that was thin before the trade deadline and got even thinner when Daniel Tice left to go to Chicago. So that should be priority one. I like having Tatum, Brown, Smart, and Walker, but you need to have more than just Rob Williams and Tristan Thompson in the front court. So I think that should be priority number one, and then I think they'll be fine. Like a week or two before the end of the regular season, Ryan, don't forget that they were a game or two out of third place. So it's not like they're like seventh and like not good. They're seventh and just had some bad luck. So front court depth, and I would prefer veteran front court depth. That's priority number one for me.
Yeah, I agree. Especially watching the Celtics this year, I was never really worried. It's just they never really had someone to shut down Embiid. But I think that once they get a guy like that, I think that they'll be fine. It was nice to see Tatum have a really nice game there. The game that they won, he really just blew the doors off of the Nets. So that I think that's promising. That's something you can take into the next season, into the offseason. The 3-6 matchup, Matt, this was something that a lot of people were excited about. It was a rematch, and then it turned out to not be competitive at all as the Bucks swept the Miami Heat. I talked about it a little bit last week. This is not the same Miami Heat for a number of reasons. They had the COVID issues, but even the roster makeup's not the same as it was a season ago when they were in the bubble. You made a good point that they were playing into October, and then they had to have that quick rebound for late December start. So they had a lot of things working against them. I don't think this is entirely surprising. I think this is just more playing into the narrative I'm trying to create, is that the Bucks are a finals contender. Like I would be scared of the Bucks. They look really good. For years the question was, who do they have after Giannis? Will he bring in Drew Holiday, who is a great two-way player, does a lot offensively, does a lot defensively. You still have Chris Middleton there. That you said last week, I think, made a good point. They're sneaky deep. They have a lot of guys that can come off the bench and contribute positively, and we saw it against the Heat. I mean, none of those games were really that close outside of Game 1.
Yeah, well, their depth will be tested a lot now that Dante DiVincenzo's out for the remainder of the postseason. A guy who you and I are very familiar with from his college days, and a guy that you've known me for a long time. I've been pounding the table on the Dante DiVincenzo train. I think he's very good. I think, him starting was a long time coming. But yeah, they were just a better team. I said it last week. Miami, they had no offseason. They had literally 6 weeks. And it's like, all right, let's go again. So none of their young guys could develop, really integrate more into the team. And then obviously them, like the Celtics, had a bunch of COVID issues. So, I think it's more of a testament to how good of a team Milwaukee is, and the fact that they looked at their loss to Miami last year, Ryan, in a bubble, and they said, we have to go out and adjust this team. As you just said, they filled out their depth. They got Drew Holiday. So people questioned, is that too much to give up for Drew Holiday? I think it's proving that they needed to do that. And sometimes you have to make that move and overpay a little bit. The Sixers overpaid a little bit for your guy Tobias Harris, but that's working out really well now in hindsight too. So sometimes you got to make that move. So credit to Milwaukee's front office. They did, and it's going to set up a really exciting second-round matchup.
Yeah, I think it's going to be one of the most intriguing semifinal matchups we've seen in quite some time. The Nets and the Bucks. I really do hope that just selfishly it goes 7 games, just because I want to watch these teams go at it for 7 games. I think it's going to be closer than some people think. I see some people saying, the Nets, that's going to be an easy 5-game series for them. They'll win, pretty simply. I don't think that's the case. I really think the Bucks can give the Nets a scare. I think the Bucks could beat the Nets. I'd go as far to say that. I think that they match up well, but I'm excited. This is what we've been waiting for, so I'm very excited to see it actually transpire. The most intriguing series of the first round in the East was the Knicks and the Hawks. The first game, of course, was very close. Trae Young hit the dagger. Knicks bounced back in game number 2, and then the past 2 games, man, we've seen the Knicks really struggle, especially on the defensive end, and now they're down 3-1. Matt, to me, it just seems like a team that they overperformed in the regular season. It almost seems like they're just kind of tired. Like they played hard, they played physical every game during the regular season. Now it just seems like the Hawks have a lot of talent. I want to make sure that gets out there, but it just seems like the Knicks, they just don't have anything left.
No, I think coming back to the Garden could give them a spark. I think what helps them is that 2 of the remaining 3 games that they would have to win would be at MSG, which I think is a real big positive for them. With that being said, I think they just need a little more offensive punch. I think going up against a team that could shoot the ball like Atlanta can at times and really kind of score like Atlanta can. Ever since Nate McMillan took over as the head coach, they've really kind of had a renaissance a little bit and really kind of, righted the ship. So Atlanta, listen, it's a team that might give your Sixers a little bit of issues, but I also think that Atlanta's going to have to win a game at the Garden, which they barely won game 1 in the Garden, so it's not as easy as people think, especially for the people that think that the Knicks aren't New York's team. it's going to be packed on Wednesday night. It's going to be raring to go. It'll be really exciting, and it's a tough place to play regardless of how tired the team is, because that'll give you that extra adrenaline that you need to keep up.
I said last week when we were talking about the NBA as a Sixers fan, I'm not scared of anybody. But having said that, the Hawks, it's going to be a much more difficult matchup than this Wizards matchup is. As you said, they have a lot of guys that can score at all levels. Trae Young, he can steal a game on his own, which I'm kind of expecting. I don't expect the Sixers to sweep this series against the Hawks, but they are a fun team. And as you said, they have a lot of guys that can hurt you. You have Trae Young there. You have Clint Capella. You have Danilo Gallinari, Bogdan Bogdanovic. The list goes on and on. There's a lot of guys that can just score whenever they want. They could just have a really good game and kill your team. But I think I'm excited. Like, I was really high on the Hawks coming into the season. I'm glad that they were able to get into the playoffs, get the 5 seed. I think this is a team to watch definitely moving forward. If they can get like maybe another piece in there somehow, like, this is going to be a dangerous team for years to come.
Yeah, I think they are in a much better position to get there quickly than the team that we talked about earlier in the Celtics, just because Atlanta is a little bit more of an appealing place to play. Just in terms of luring free agents. And listen, they're really deep as is. They got a lot of young talent. I still think, though, Ryan, don't count out your boy Glen's Knicks. Don't count them out. So I do say that putting Derrick Rose in the starting lineup does a lot for you right away, but then when you don't have anybody to really come in to replace him off the bench, that kind of throws off the rotation. And I know you made the point that having him as the best player on a playoff team is kind of surprising. I still think that they're more of a team-oriented style regardless. So I think it's still going to be tough for the Hawks to close them out in Game 5. It's going to take an all-out performance to win in the Garden.
I'll count them out. I'll count out the Knicks. I think they lose in 5 games. It was a great story. It was nice to see the Garden rocking, but the series is going to be over tomorrow night. I'll write it in ink, so we'll get that going. The other Eastern Conference matchup, the Sixers are up 3-1. They could not pull off the sweep. They had a lot of things working against them in game number 4. I'm not saying not using these as excuses. I'm just saying they lose Embiid early. They called it right knee soreness. I don't think it's his right knee. He landed very hard on his back. His knee kind of buckled a little bit, but he looked fine after he stayed in the game. They were playing 5v8. Once again, I'm not trying to blame the refs, but that was one of the worst officiated games I've ever seen. I think a fair issue was their usage was, well, I'm not even going to say that. Doc Rivers did not have his best game as a coach of the Philadelphia 76ers last night. And I know he had, you don't expect Embiid to just miss basically the entire game, but he gave Mike Scott a lot of minutes. He started him out in the third quarter, which he should not have done. His usage of Ben Simmons, especially in the second half and the fourth quarter, really was a little questionable. I've heard the arguments for and against taking him off the court late in the game so they can't just do the hack of Simmons. I could go either way on that, but if you're Ben Simmons, it's not going to happen right now, but you need to improve at the free throw line. I saw people saying like, oh, LeBron and Giannis aren't great free throw shooters, but Ben not being able to convert on these free throw opportunities is going to cost this team games the further they get into the playoffs.
Yeah, I see. I'm into more of the mindset to not overreact over one game. I think the Sixers are fine. I think they'll be fine for a while. Meaning rounds in the playoffs, I think they'll be fine for. Listen, I didn't watch the game, so I won't really make too many comments. I think that keeping Embiid healthy is the more important thing, and I think winning in Philadelphia is going to be very doable, even if he doesn't play Game 5. So I think you're fine. The Simmons shooting thing, you and I have been going at it on this for a long time now. He's one of the best athletes in the sport, but in the playoffs, you need guys that can knock down shots, especially at the free throw line. So that'll be something that you revisit, right? And against teams that you're going to need to score points against, like Milwaukee, Brooklyn, you're going to need all that point production, and you're going to need points off your bench. So honestly, just keep Embiid healthy, because if he's not healthy, it's going to be, you're not going to have the MVP of the league, arguably, right? I mean, obviously that's not been determined yet, but he's one of the guys that could be picked. So you're going to lose a caliber of that talent if you don't keep him healthy.
I'll give them the credit. They battled back. They were down by 12 in the fourth quarter, and they were able to make it a close game. They were going back and forth there with the Wizards for a while, despite the fact that the offense looked completely disjointed after Embiid went out, which I think that's understandable. You lose a guy that's going to finish top 3 in MVP voting. Your offense obviously isn't going to look the same, but just hopefully, as you said, it all revolves around Embiid's health. Daryl Morey sent out kind of a funny tweet last night at 1:30 in the morning. It was like 1 a.m. We're all okay. So I hope that means that Embiid will be fine. I think he will be fine. I've been telling people if they weren't up 3-0 against an 8 seed, I think he would have continued playing. But I understand being overly cautious. So I still think they'll close that out in 5. The Sixers are a very tough out when they play at home. So moving on to the West, we have a lot of great matchups out West. We'll start with the only one that's 3-1, which is the Jazz and the Grizzlies. The Grizzlies stole game 1, 112-109, and they've made the past couple games close, games 3 and game 4, playing in Memphis. They haven't been able to kind of get over the hump, though. Donovan Mitchell, surprisingly, Matt, he makes the Jazz a lot better when he plays. I don't know if people realize that because he wasn't there game 1, but he makes the offense a lot better.
Yeah, so this is still piggybacking off of last week, the popular take people want to make. Just because people don't stay up to watch the Utah Jazz and just because the Jazz aren't a major market team, people like to say they're not good. It's a very casual and stupid take for people to make. Utah is one of the best teams in the league. Donovan Mitchell never gets the credit he deserves for the impact he brings to that team and the guys around him. And you say, oh, well, as you said, people like to bring up the argument, well, Memphis has played it close basically every game. That's because Memphis is a good team. They played their way into the NBA playoffs. On top of that, they have a lot of young talent that doesn't quit, a lot of really good shooting options. Well, I don't want to say that. Shooting has come back to bite them a little bit, but they have a lot of good athletes on the team. DeAnthony Melton, I think, deserves a lot of credit for the way he played last night. G League guy, by the way. Really exciting player to go along with John Morant. Listen, the Grizzlies, as someone who called the game down there at the FedEx Forum, obviously at the college level, but that's a tough place to play, college or pro. Utah went in there, played well, did what they needed to do, and they're a really good team, and they're going to beat a really good 8 seed. The Grizzlies are much different than what the Wizards are. Much, much different. So this will be a really one of the more quality wins, I think, considering the fact that they didn't have their star player game 1. They come back, they do what they need to do, they look really good in the process, they hold off this feisty team that, like Atlanta, isn't going anywhere anytime soon. So Utah, very good.
Yeah, I agree. I think they're going to close that in 5 games. But you alluded to this last week. Memphis is still going to be good for a while. They have, you have Morant, you have Jaren Jackson Jr., Dylan Brooks, Brandon Clark. You have good young talent there. So this is going to be a team to watch out for moving forward. I think that this was a good, this. I think overall they're not going to win the series, but it was a good series for them. I think they can build upon this and go into next season with some positive momentum, especially if they make some roster additions. I think would be helpful. The other 3 series are all 2-2. We'll start with the biggest one, Phoenix and the Lakers. After Game 3, everybody said, well, this is it. The Lakers are just going to win the next 2, win the series 4-1. And then Anthony Davis gets injured. KCP obviously went out. The offense just did not look very good, and the Suns were able to pull out a win in Game 4. Matt, if Anthony Davis is out, I saw that he's not likely to play in Game 5 tonight. Without Anthony Davis, I know LeBron is an all-time great, but I don't see how the Lakers are going to be able to win this series. The Suns, you mentioned the Jazz being a very, very good team. The Suns are a very, very good team as well. And I think that they would be able to overpower the Lakers if they don't have their 2 studs.
Well, I don't see it's a groin injury, right? A pulled groin. That takes a while to heal, right? I did that at one point. it takes a very long time. Is that considered soft tissue injury, I guess, right? Like a muscle injury pull. Those don't go away as quickly as people think. With that being said, people like us don't have NBA strength and conditioning people that could help get him ready to go. Obviously, you mentioned he won't play in Game 5, but maybe he plays down the road. I still think they have enough depth to compete. But again, that's a tough injury to kind of play with. And it's an injury you can make worse. So Phoenix is good. I think, the NBA will benefit either way with one of these two teams advancing. Obviously, the Lakers would probably help them out more in certain departments. But the question for a while was Chris Paul going to be healthy, because he always got hurt in the playoffs. But now with AD being out, he is more important to the Lakers than people make it out to be. But if it's a minor strain, he should be okay, and maybe he plays Game 6, Game 7, because they're going to need him to win.
No, absolutely. The one thing working in Phoenix's favor, of course, is that they are the 2 seed. They have to win 2 more games, and they play 2 of the next 3 at home. So that's something they have working in their favor, which is nice. But I know if I say the Suns are going to win the next 2 games, LeBron's going to go off for like 40, 13, and 10, and he's going to will the Lakers to win. I think that's definitely a very possible thing that could happen. It's just, I don't know. I've been big on the Suns all year. You made the point about how the Heat, they basically had no offseason. They had to come back. Well, you could say the same thing about the Lakers, too. I know they're a little different. You have LeBron and Anthony Davis, so it's probably going to be a little easier for them to kind of come back. But I think it's just an off year for the Lakers. I don't think that losing this hurts the legacy at all. I think it's just there are a lot of things working against them. And they went up against a really, really good team. I've seen a lot of people discounting the Phoenix Suns the same way they discount the Utah Jazz. I think part of it's because of your argument. These people don't watch games on the West Coast, but like the Suns are very, very good. Like there is a very real chance they could come out of the West, I feel like.
Well, pretty much anyone 1 through 7 could come out of the West. Really, I mean, outside of the Grizzlies, but I think don't count out LeBron until he walks off the court and they say that Phoenix won. Because as a Celtics fan, you count out LeBron and then he comes into TD Garden and drops like 42 points and then wins the next game down in Miami. So don't count him out. Coming from a guy who's experienced it before, this is when he thrives. He's a good enough player. I don't care if he's 35 or 85. He's still going to will a team to a victory. But we'll see. I hope for the sake of the series that Anthony Davis could come back in Game 6. But day to day, we'll see how that goes. Because all those kind of like muscle pulls don't really... They're weird. You can feel good one day, like if you pull a hamstring or something. And then the next day, it hurts again. So you never really know with that.
We will see as Game 5 is tonight at Phoenix at 10 Eastern. The 3-6 matchup, Denver and Portland. Portland won Game 1. The Nuggets battled back to win the next 2 games. Then Portland did win Game 4, so the series is tied up at 2-2. This is another series I really hope goes 7 games. We talked about this last week. We talked about how this could go 7 games, and it does seem to be on that track. These 2 teams are very evenly matched, especially with Denver not having Jamal Murray. It's been really fun to watch Lillard go battle, and then the same thing with Nikola Jokic. This has been probably my favorite series so far. Some people are going to say Lakers-Suns. Some people are going to say Clippers-Mavs. Denver-Portland has been my favorite series so far the first round, and I hope it continues that. Game 5 tonight.
As I mentioned, those 2 teams played a really long series back in 2019. Doesn't shock me that they're doing it again now. Portland is a team that you've probably known or heard me to be big on for a while. Always a piece or 2 away. Either Nurkic was hurt or Zach Collins was hurt. They never really had a full team. I think Collins is still hurt. But in any case, you have Nurkic. You have a little more depth. I love Portland. I also love Denver. I said last week, it sucks that we don't get Jamal Murray, but at least you have an MVP candidate in Jokic, who, in many ways, like some of the other players, is still trying to earn respect in the league, right, among the fans. I mean, people say, "Oh, this is the guy that's going to be the MVP." I mean, yeah, look at what he does, right? I mean, the casual fan won't stay up to watch the games on the West Coast that aren't the Lakers games, but the Nuggets are a really good team, and Austin Rivers, Ryan, you got to give this guy credit. Wasn't in the league for a couple months, comes in and starts to integrate pretty well with this team. Obviously, he's not going to replace Jamal Murray, but he can give you something, which I think is what they needed, especially after you bring in Aaron Gordon too. But you needed good guard play because you weren't expecting Murray to get hurt. You get Rivers in there. Either one of these teams can realistically make the finals.
We move on to the Clippers and the Mavericks, the final series that we're going to talk about. Mavericks won the first two games. It was all trouble in Los Angeles. People wondered if the Clippers should just blow it up. Is Kawhi going to leave? Is he going to decline his player option and go somewhere else? Is he going to go to Miami, Golden State? And now that's all been quelled because the Clippers have won Games 3 and Game 4. Luka is dealing with a nerve injury in his neck, and apparently he still doesn't have full range of motion in his neck, which for a player like him, I have to imagine is very difficult to play through just because of his play style. But the Clippers, for right now, it's everything's even again. They just have to win 2 out of the next 3. And I think they can. I went into this series expecting the Clippers to be able to handle the Mavericks, maybe not in 5 games, but I thought they'd still be able to handle Dallas, which is why the first 2 games were very surprising. I don't know if this is going to be an injury that he has to deal with for the rest of the playoffs. If it is, it seems to be affecting him mightily, and I just don't see how, if he's playing the way he is, that Dallas is going to pull out 2 more wins.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. The big thing was the popular take was just to bash the Clippers, bash Ty Lue and everybody else. Playoff P, Paul George. This is still a really talented team, and I think a lot of people forget they're playing some good basketball and the fact that they're also really deep. One of the deeper teams in the league. You mentioned the Luka injury. I think, like some of the other teams, we talked about the Hawks, we talked about, the Grizzlies, they still need a couple more pieces, I think, in terms of just a little more, help for Luka. But in any case, I really like the Clippers. I've been trying to will an all-LA conference final. I don't think we're going to get it, but I think we'll get at least one LA team in there. Might be the Clippers. That'll be a really exciting second-round matchup if we could get it between them and the Jazz. 2 of the deeper teams in the league, if that's the case. So we'll see. I'm happy for the sake of the Clippers and their fans that they were able to avoid just being utterly embarrassed in the span of 4 games.
I do want to get this take out there. Regardless of whether or not the Clippers win or lose this series, Kawhi is not going to go anywhere, is my opinion. He will decline his player option, which he should, but I've seen people kind of wonder, Miami looks pretty appealing. There's other teams out there that I think he'd look really good on. He's not going to leave Los Angeles. He went there. A big part of that was because he wanted to go back home. He likes Ty Lue a lot. They have a good chemistry together. They work well together. So I need to make it perfectly clear. I'm 99.9% sure he's not leaving Los Angeles. I think he's just going to re-up for 5 more years, and that's where he's going to retire.
Well, yeah, I think a lot of people forget, as you said, that he went there to go home. And he's a simple guy, right? We all know it. He just wants to go and play basketball. He doesn't want to go chase rings. He's already got one. Got multiple, actually. But he just wants to go and play basketball where he wants to play, and that's LA. I mean, why would you want to go anywhere else when that's your home? That's where you know everybody. It's a low-pressure environment. He could just go in and do what he needs to do and then go home because that's what he is. Just a guy that comes into work, does his business, then goes home. So he's not going anywhere. The photoshops of him in the Heat jersey need to stop. It's not happening. I didn't even hear the Golden State one, but regardless, he's not going anywhere.
His legacy is secured. He doesn't need to go to a different team to try to do anything else. Like, as he said, he has multiple rings, one of the best two-way players we've ever seen. He just has to be there, put up numbers for another however long he wants to play. He's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. Like, that's it. He can drive from San Diego to the Clippers, and that's it.
he doesn't even care about the legacy probably. He just, does it because he likes to play basketball. I mean, he probably cares internally, but he's not going to show it. I mean, him going and trying to, ring chase or go, like, he went through all this effort to go back home, right? It was a whole big story. He went back to L.A., was able to get one of his buddies in there and Paul George, and it's still a really deep team. He could still win there. They have a lot of really good players, right? You got Reggie Jackson, you got one of the Morris twins, you got Zubac, you got a lot of guys off the bench too. Like, it's not like they're a bad team. So it's, yeah. And Ty Lue, as you mentioned, another guy who never gets the credit he deserves for being a good head coach. He's not going anywhere. So them losing early or them losing in the finals is not going to deter him from re-signing.
That'll be more NBA talk coming your way next week. The most we've talked about the NBA, and I think we've talked about it twice, so that wasn't a high bar to clear. We're going to move over to the National Hockey League. Got all the second-round matchups figured out now after last night, and we're going to start there last night in the Scotia North Division. We already knew that Winnipeg advanced because they swept the Oilers. All the Maple Leafs had to do, we talked about this last week, they were up 3-1. All they had to do was win one more game, and they weren't able to win one more game. They lost Game 5 in overtime. They lost Game 6 in overtime. They didn't show up for the game last night in Game 7. They got a late goal. I want to say there was like 15 seconds left, maybe. I don't know. I don't remember. I think it was Nylander. And the Maple Leafs, once again, in front of our eyes, have collapsed. They haven't won a playoff series since, I think, 2004. They haven't won a cup since the 60s. This has to be this has to be the most frustrating team, taking into account legacy, history, everything else, to be a fan of. I cannot imagine actively rooting for the Toronto Maple Leafs every year.
Yeah, it's kind of a joke at this point. When you go back, at least from a Bruins fan's perspective, I mean, we've eliminated them from the playoffs at least 3 or 4 times in my lifetime. Yet for one of the premier organizations in hockey, Ryan, we're talking about the Toronto Maple Leafs, right? It's honestly kind of a joke at this point. I get that, they had a couple injuries or whatever. Tavares got absolutely annihilated early on in the series, but people were talking this was going to be the Leafs' year. This is the best chance they had, the best team they had in a long time, the easiest road they had to define. All you had to do was beat a Montreal team that barely made the playoffs. That wasn't entirely great or awe-inspiring. And then you could beat a Winnipeg team that wasn't that great or awe-inspiring, and then you would have been one of the last 4 teams. It's kind of laughable at this point. When you look at some organizations that just haven't made the playoffs in a long time. You look at the Mariners. You look at other teams like
the Phillies,
the Pirates. These are teams that no, there aren't premier franchises. No offense, Ryan, but Toronto, that's a premier market and a premier, original 6 kind of thing. This is a team that should not be losing games the way they are. It's kind of a joke. It was a joke for me for a while because the Bruins would meet them every year in the first round, and then they beat them in 7 games in overtime every year in the first round. I don't even know what you do at this point. I guess it's kind of good that the fans couldn't be there because I could only imagine what the reaction would have been if they lost on home ice in Game 7. But, yeah, kind of a joke at this point. And we obviously don't know Toronto Maple Leafs fans, but I can only imagine what their Twitter, their Reddit groups, their Discord groups are like right now.
Well, that's their sport, too, when the Flyers or the Bruins lose, we're obviously upset. But, we have, other sports that we can kind of look at, Toronto Maple Leafs, that's their thing. That's the only thing that they have. Not the only thing, but
they
you
got
get
the
what I'm saying.
Raptors won them a ring.
Yeah, but, it's... Obviously, it's different, though. This is what they've been waiting for forever. And they finally had that, as you said, that nice road. It's okay, we beat this Montreal team that probably shouldn't be here. And then we move on to play the Oilers or the Jets. We could definitely beat them. No, they couldn't even handle step 1. I think, obviously, you got to get some more offense in there. They struggled to score, especially later in the series. Outside of Matthews, they really don't have a lot of scoring depth behind them. Like when Matthews isn't scoring, they don't really have anybody else that they can look at. So as you said, like I don't know how you solve it. I mean, it's easy to say, you just bring in guys like this and then you'll be better. But I hate to say the organization's cursed because that type of stuff doesn't exist, but it almost seems like it. Like for years, this premier organization has brought in good players. They've had good coaches. They've had, good pieces to win with, and they just have never won. Like it's mind-blowing at this point. I said it gets funnier every year, but I feel bad for that fan base that they have to go through this every single year. I can't imagine.
It's just, yeah, I think it's really bad for the NHL, league office too. I mean, to have one of your biggest markets just consistently flop on the biggest stage, you can only imagine from a ratings perspective getting a Canadian team in the final, let alone the Maple Leafs, what that would do for ratings, what that would do for revenue, everything else. And they've been swinging and missing on this for decades. So I think Gary Bettman's probably sitting there saying, how can we get this team any easier of a road to help bring in more? Like, I don't even know. It speaks more to the point of, are we ever going to see a Canadian team make it back to the Stanley Cup final? I mean, the last one was in 2011, Ryan.
Yeah.
With Vancouver. So, like, hockey's better when there's a Canadian team in a final. Obviously, this year, we mentioned it, not really going to be any fans there if they do, but yeah, it really sucks from a league perspective, too. Because if not Toronto, then who? They're the best, in the best possible situation out of any of the Canadian teams that are available to make a Stanley Cup run. And then when we go back to the normal format in divisions next year, you're going to have to deal with Tampa Bay. You're going to have to deal with Boston again. Two teams that I think are better than them this year and even next year. So what are you going to do then? You're going to have to go through both of those teams just to make it to the Eastern Conference Finals.
No disrespect to Winnipeg, who I talked up a lot last week. No disrespect to Montreal, who they have some pieces. They're kind of playing with house money. I don't expect them to make that side of the bracket finals. But neither of those teams are going to make the Stanley Cup final, especially not with Colorado on their side of the bracket, who throttled the Vegas Golden Knights, who were able to win in 7 games over the Minnesota Wild, so that we did get the Colorado-Vegas matchup that we all wanted. And the first game wasn't even close. There is no way. I'll lock it in right now. Colorado is definitely making the Stanley Cup playoffs. This team is not losing to anybody. There's no way. It's not possible.
Yeah, they're really good. I think if anybody wants to stay up and watch some late night basketball, flip on that game as well. On the hockey side, Colorado's really good. There could be a scenario where Denver's hosting both the Stanley Cup and NBA Finals. We could very well see a scenario like that. Do they play in Denver, the Avalanche? I don't know if they play in the same place where the Nuggets do. If they do, whatever. In any case, the state of Colorado. But they're really good. They're really fast. They score a lot of goals. Really good environment. I hope they make the final too. I mean, it was just from an entertainment perspective.
2 of the 1 seeds made it to the second round. One of them was Colorado. The other one was Carolina, a team that I've been talking up for a while. They unfortunately got a tough draw. They have to go up against Tampa Bay. This should be a fun series. They lost game 1 2-1. Hopefully this one goes deep. That would be a lot of fun for me personally. But I did say last week if I had to give a Stanley Cup prediction, it would have to be Colorado-Tampa Bay. I'm still going to stick with Colorado-Tampa Bay, but I hope that this series goes 7. I think there's a lot of fun reasons for you to watch this series if you're not already.
Well, yeah, it's really good to be in Tampa Bay right now. You win the Super Bowl. Then you have a team that's won 15 out of 16 straight games in the Rays. No offense to Phillies or Yankees fans, but seem to be doing pretty well against 2 of those teams. Then Tampa Bay on the ice, right? You win the Stanley Cup, then you come back this year, and they're really good again, and be a scenario where they make it to the final and win. I mean, it's almost like Tom Brady has that effect because we haven't won anything since he left, and then, he's brought all this success down there. So I don't know. Tough scene for me, I guess.
You had, well, let's talk about your team. The Bruins are going up against the Islanders, a 3-4 matchup out of the Mass Mutual East Division pod. It's almost like I don't even have to watch the games because whenever a team scores, you just text the other person's name in the group chat. So it's like, oh, okay. I just saw Matt pop up in the group chat, so I guess the Islanders just scored. Oh, nope, just saw Glen's name, so that means that the Bruins tied it up. The series is tied 1-1. You had Game 2 last night on Memorial Day. The Islanders won in overtime thanks to Casey Cizikas. Kind of a defensive breakdown there that led to a rush on Tuukka Rask, and he couldn't stop that. So now it is knotted up. The series is going back to New York for Games 3 and Game 4. So, Matt, tough situation to be in. The Islanders obviously play very well at home. They play off the crowd. So, how are you feeling with the series tied 1-1? Your home ice advantage is gone.
Well, it'll be fine, number one. Number two, Tom Brady didn't take all the championship winnings down because I will give some plugs. First of all, Bryce Wasserman and the Cannons, Ryan, just gearing up for another season. I'm pretty sure they won. In terms of the women's hockey side, we won a cup there. And the Revolution, in terms of Major League Soccer, Ryan, looking pretty good on the pitch. So Tampa Bay, I mentioned he took some of the championship pedigree, but not all of it just yet. But Bruins will be fine. I will say if we could contribute to the Summer of Glen, I will be happy because I know the societal and cultural impacts of the Summer of Glen will trump any kind of championship that I could win. With that being said, I still think we come back to Boston with a tied series at 2-2. And then at that point, I think the Bruins will win in 6 or 7. I mean, I get it. Ooh, Nassau's a tough place to play. We'll be fine. We'll win a game. We'll come back 2-2, and then it'll be all good from there. I will say, though, that's a really bad turnover for Lausanne yesterday and just a way to end the game. I don't know what he was doing, trying to go cross ice with that so quickly. You might as well look up before you pass, before it goes off a skate right into Cizikas' stick. Yeah, really bad way to end the game last night. I thought we had all the momentum at that point in the overtime. I thought we had many chances to try and put one away. The fact that we had to come back, we really kind of stalled out in the second period. Had to storm back like they do in typical Bruins fashion in the playoffs. Bergeron, Marchand, the whole squad, but they'll take a game in Nassau, they'll come back 2-2, and then all will be well in the world again.
We'll see. I'm on the side of the Bruins. I do think that the Bruins are going to be able to pull it out. I think they're a good team.
They're much more talented. They have more talent. They're more championship pedigree. These guys, people forget most of this core has been around for a long time. They've played together, have a little bit more youth on the back now, which is good and bad. It was bad last night, but I think they're just a more talented team. People say, oh, well, it's a tough place to play. I mean, these guys, you talk about Bergeron, Marchand. I mean, I'll throw Pasternak's name in there too. Krejci. They've played in these environments before. Same with Tuukka Rask. Really doesn't matter. These guys are professionals. And I mean that with really any sport. When people say it's a tough place to play, I mean, in terms of getting a seasoned veteran in any sport, a tough place to play for LeBron is not the same place for the average NBA player. Same thing for other people that have just seen it. So they'll be fine. It'll be 2-2 coming back for Game 5, and then it'll be 2 out of 3 at that point.
Yeah, theoretically, the series could be over by the time we record this podcast next week. Game 5 is Monday. The Colorado-Vegas series could be over, but I'm sure Vegas gets a game in there somehow. The Jets and Canadiens could be over. I'm sure Montreal finds a way to steal a game. So we'll probably have some pretty entertaining things to talk about next week for the NHL. We'll pivot real quick to Major League Baseball. We haven't talked about baseball in a while. The first thing I thought would be cool to start with, MLB on their social media platforms has kind of been putting out this thing. We're 2 months in. Give us your updated predictions. So we gave predictions for the MLB season in our preview episode back in March or April, whenever we did it. So uh, they gave me a chance. They gave the fan base a chance to update predictions. So we'll do the same thing here. So based on what you've seen so far through this season, through 2 months, um, would you like to give your new, or maybe you can even keep them the same, your MVP predictions? I think my current AL and NL MVP predictions would be Vlad and Castellanos, is what I said.
Um, you know, I still think it's a little early to give some of these. I will say that um, I got to give some props to some of my Red Sox guys. I don't necessarily think JD Martinez is the MVP, but he's playing really well this year. I think Tatis is playing himself up a little bit on the National League side. Had a really exciting series against the Astros, which is always good to see considering my team can't beat the Astros. I don't know. I will abstain from giving predictions. I will say the MVP of the year will be whoever can hit over 200 for the Yankees. That will be the MVP of the year.
I just need to give these out because I'd like to give myself a lot of opportunity to get things right. So I have my predictions from March, but I'm also going to put these ones out there. That way I can just add to the player pool. That way I can try to be right.
I also think it's tough to pick against Ohtani as well for what he's doing.
It is, yeah, because he's
I mean, if he plays the full season, I don't think anybody touches him for that award.
Yeah, it would be surprising.
Or like a good majority. Like if he can put up some numbers, I think it's hard to beat him.
Yeah, it's I would agree. It's just great as fans to be able to live in a time when we get to see this guy play at his peak, which is really good. Like we get to, I mean, Trout's injured right now, obviously, but just if all these guys are healthy, we get to see Trout, we get to see DeGrom, we get to watch this two-way star in Ohtani. We just get to see all these great players that are going to be among the best in baseball history when their careers are over. So that's always something that I like to kind of put into perspective. Like, this is one of the best guys I'm ever going to watch in my lifetime. I'm only 24 years old. So that's always kind of cool to have in the back of your mind watching a baseball game.
Yeah. And I could say the same thing to transition you, Ryan, about Garrett Cole, who's had a absurd year. We talked about absurdity on the soccer pitch earlier with 11 goals. He is my Cy Young pick, Ryan. So I will backtrack on my anti-Yankee talk about a minute ago, and I will give you props, Glenn and Zach, that you have a really good pitcher. So I hope that the Red Sox don't have to play him a lot this year, and that'll be great. So there's a nice transition for you, Ryan.
It's a shame that they don't have four other good starting pitchers. Not to incite arguments. I do also have Garrett Cole as my AL Cy Young. I have Zach Wheeler, no bias, as my NL Cy Young. Rookie of the year, I have Garcia from the Rangers and Trevor Rogers from the Marlins. I forget. I definitely didn't have the Rays out of the NL for my AL for my initial prediction. I think I had the White Sox. I'm changing it to the Rays. I'm full on with the Rays right now, and I have the Padres. And 2 months in, I'm changing my World Series champion to the Rays. That's what I'm gonna do.
I think if Jacob DeGrom doesn't get the Cy Young Award, there's an issue. He's the best pitcher we're going to see, really, maybe ever. I mean, the guy's ridiculous. Could go over 100 for, multiple innings, multiple pitches in a row. I mean, it's absurd what he can do. I'm not going to go through all the list of what you just said. I will say, to ruffle some feathers, Red Sox might sneak in as a playoff team. Tampa Bay looks pretty good, but maybe I'll go with Tony La Russa's White Sox, Ryan, to make the World Series. Maybe I'll do it. I have La Russa's boy Yarmin as the AL Rookie of the Year, which would be kind of funny in many ways. No, I'm going all over the place, but then out of the NL, I like San Diego. I think it'd be good for baseball. Kind of tired of the Dodgers. But with that being said, watching October baseball at Dodger Stadium is not necessarily a bad thing, but I'll take the Padres.
I want to support the White Sox. It's just so hard because La Russa, I just have so many issues with him at this point. Like,
but don't have issue with the players though. The players are really good and really exciting.
But like,
you can have an issue with the like 80-year-old dude that's managing the team, but
I don't want him to get another ring. You know, like he doesn't deserve it. Like I don't want to see him in the celebration. But I don't know. Whatever. We'll see. They're a very good team. Absolutely. So we'll do this again, I'm sure, in a couple more months. But I did pick Zach Wheeler for NL Cy Young because I need something to be optimistic and happy about because my team stinks. We'll transition now to talk about we're not going to talk about your team because your team's actually good, and that's not fun to talk about. So we're going to talk about the Phillies and the Yankees because we'd like to talk about bad teams. The Phillies, I've gone on the record, I think they need to blow it up. It's this roster as it's constructed doesn't work. I know they're without Harper. I know they're without Didi. But even before his injury, Didi didn't look very good. Harper, he was an MVP candidate for the first month of the season. Then he got hit in the wrist and the face, and it doesn't seem like he's been the same since. He's not going to come back when he's eligible on Wednesday. It's just this roster, this way they currently constructed it, it's not a good way to construct a roster. You need homegrown talent that you've developed through the farm system to fill a lot of your roster. You can't just throw money at everything and expect it to solve your issues. The Phillies have, I think, the 5th or 6th highest player payroll in baseball, and they're not a good team in any sense. They're historically bad defensively. The other guys, they can never get on the same page at the same time. So if I'm the Phillies, if I'm Dave Dombrowski, I would just blow it up and try to start again. Because for the past 10 years, we've had a major organizational failure in identifying and developing young players, young prospects. So I think we had one failed rebuild. I think we need to rebuild again. I think that's the only way, especially in a division where every other team seems to be pointing up with young guys that they can count on, that the Phillies are going to be contenders. Because as they are right now, I don't care if they throw more money at people, they're not going to be a contender. They need to start over.
Well, you mentioned homegrown talent. You look at the Red Sox from back when we were in college, Ryan, that team that won. I mean, Benintendi, Bogarts, Bradley, Betts. I'm sure there's more guys, Vasquez. All those guys came up through our system. And that's one of the reasons why, Boston, up until Dave Dombrowski, ruined our farm system, ruined, the team. We had a lot of homegrown guys, a lot of guys that we developed and brought up through our system. I think that's a valuable point. I think that's why, from a team in my perspective, I know we don't talk about good teams, but, it's what Chaim Bloom's trying to do in Boston now. This team really hasn't been good since we were in, middle school, right? When they won the World Series?
Freshman year of high school. That was the last year that this team showed any type of success. We have the second longest playoff drought in Major League Baseball right behind Seattle. Like, that's not a good, especially for a market like Philadelphia, that is completely unacceptable.
Well, I don't know if it's going to change anytime soon. I think it helps that you're in a division that's still attainable and still winnable to some extent. But at the same time, I see some of our former teachers post about them all the time. I don't watch Phillies games that often, but, I see people say they strike out a lot. Shout out Nick Marmaru, saying he watched a game that had like 30 strikeouts in it. I don't know if that's the case or not, but I would believe it based off the direction the game's going in now. But in any case, it's a shame because the city is fun when the Phillies are good and people go, and it used to be like an event, right? You used to see people posting about it in their Chase Utley jerseys, Jimmy Rollins jerseys. Jimmy Rollins, by the way, Glen, very good player. I know he likes to deny Jimmy Rollins' caliber. At the Hall of Fame level he used to say, or just in general?
I think it's almost like one guy can be good at the same time that another guy was also good. I know it's a hard concept, but they were both good shortstops.
Yeah, the Phillies stink, though. Sorry to say, Ryan. Not too late to jump on the Red Sox bandwagon. I know we got your guy, Chaim Bloom, So we'll welcome you in. We'll get you some shirts, and we'll get you ready to go if you want to come
Oh,
over.
nope. I've already have my other team set. I have 2 more Blue Jays shirts coming in this week, along with my Blue Jays jacket and my Blue Jays quarter zip. So I'm an unofficial Blue Jays supporter for the 2021 season. So that'll be my team I go for this year because this team is hard to watch. This team sucks. I think, given the expectations surrounding this team coming into the season, you got to remember, this team lost 99 games several years ago. This season has been worse than that season. Just every aspect of this team sucks. Like from the top down, there is nothing that I can be happy about. It's a shame. It really is a shame. I really thought that this could be the year because they made good. They retooled the bullpen. That's kind of worked a little bit. Not too great. You have the second year of Joe Girardi. I see a lot of people saying fire Joe. He's done some questionable things this year, but it's not all him. I think the perfect example is Gabe Kapler. As soon as Gabe Kapler left, he's had success. And this year, the Giants are one of the best teams in baseball. It's Joe's made a couple bad decisions. It ain't his fault. This roster just stinks. He has no talent to work with whatsoever. It ain't his fault. So, as I said, just blow it up. At least then I can kind of look forward to the future. Right now, they're kind of like the Sixers were from like when we were growing up for the most part, when they were just like very mediocre. Maybe they sneak in the playoffs as like a very low. I mean, baseball, you're not really seeded, but they need to do this. This isn't working out. They need to change things up. The Yankees, another team where things are not working out. We talked about them, I guess, about a month and a half ago, Matt, and we said this Yankees team, they're in real danger of falling out of things if they don't turn things around, and they did for a little bit. And now they're 29-25, which is not a bad record. Still pretty solid, but offensively, they have been one of the worst teams in baseball here for a little bit. I know they're dealing with injuries and stuff, but this Yankees team right now just has a lot of question marks, Matt. And if they want to stay in contention, they're going to need to figure them out sooner rather than later.
Well, this is a huge week for determining where they're going to go with 4 games against Tampa Bay, then 3 against the Red Sox, 2 teams that are ahead of you in the division. So you could either erase that gap entirely, or you could basically put yourself in a really deep hole going forward. So this is the big week. This is movement week for the Yankees. Not off to a great start. I know it's the summer of Glen, so we're trying to get to boost up his teams, but listen, when you're playing the 2 teams that are ahead of you, you got to take, probably 2/3 of those games, right, to try and make up some ground. And for that, so there's 7 games, you're going to need to win like 4 or 5 of them. And I don't know, it's tough the way they're playing right now.
We talked about in our preview, the starting pitching staff was going to be a question mark. I still think that's been an issue, but I don't think we expected the offense to be as putrid as it is. Like I think I saw a statistic that they had like the most games in a row where they scored 3 or less runs, or maybe it was just the most overall. It was something like that, which is surprising because when you look at the Yankees, the offense was supposed to be the least of their concerns. That was supposed to be a thing that they didn't have to worry about. It's almost like the Phillies. The Phillies, the offense that they constructed was not supposed to be an issue. They were supposed to mash the ball against teams, score a lot of runs, not have to worry about the pitching staff. The Yankees, they had a good bullpen, but it was kind of the same way. That nobody on that team can hit, which is just shocking to me.
Yeah, I mean, I also feel like we're at a point in the season to where we're starting to have to judge how these teams are playing. I think the bigger issue, Ryan, we talked about, the pitching staff, but you brought it up. I think Glenn tweeted it out or something, but, Tyone was throwing shade at the lineup, and he's like the 5th starter on the team. That's not really that great when you're one of the guys at the bottom of the rotation, and you're kind of calling out your offense, saying it'd be great to have some run support. Yeah, it's kind of surprising we're talking about offense with the Yankees, but it's not going to get any easier. You're playing against teams like Tampa Bay and surprisingly like Boston that have had some pretty solid pitching performances to start out the year, right? And I mean, that was the big thing with the Red Sox was that, the Yankees are just going to, come in and knock around the ball, hit some home runs. That's not a guarantee anymore. And then even, I think they played, Rich Hill yesterday? I mean, you're getting outplayed by, older pitchers, younger pitchers, people who don't even know. Like it's going to be tough, but I will say for the purpose of the summer of Glen, Ryan, Glen, you still got a couple more months to go. I know we're entering a critical period for Yankees baseball, but I will say everything is okay. I think the Yankees will be okay, and I think they will overtake the Red Sox at some point. So again, I'm contributing. I just want to say I'm contributing to the summer of Glen, trying to prop up the Yankees a little bit, but I will say it will be tougher to do that if they don't win 5 games this week, 4 or 5 games this week, because you're playing against Tampa Bay and Boston. You need to do that to make up ground.
I mean, they've scored 202 runs this year in 54 games. The Orioles have scored 202 runs this year in 54 games. The Orioles are 17 and 37. The Yankees right now have a +8 run differential. I just want to go through this. The teams that have scored the same amount of runs as the Yankees or less. So you have Baltimore, Detroit, the Mets. The Mets have only played 46 games, but either way, their offense hasn't been very good. Miami, Washington, Pittsburgh, and that's it. That's not good company to be in when it comes to the amount of runs you're scoring. You don't that they are a bottom third offense right now, which is just I could not fathom that that's the case.
Yeah, it's kind of shocking to think that, but again, there's still a lot more time, and the boys have started to kick around some trade options. I think there will be some names available. I think you have the resources to go out and get it. The question is, will the Yankees, with their track record recently of just, being cheap, not wanting to give stuff up, will they want to part with things? And we talked about it, Ryan, when we were talking about the NBA earlier, right? Sometimes you're going to have to overpay for somebody on the trade market in order to get something that might help boost your roster more, right? The Tobias Harris kind of deal. I mentioned somebody else, but I already forget. Drew Holiday. So you got to find that equivalent for the Yankees in the baseball side. You got to get somebody in there to kind of invigorate the offense, maybe get another pitcher in there. There's a lot more holes than we thought there were going to be at the beginning of the year. So, but again, I will say for Summer of Glen, maybe they turn it around. Maybe this is the big week and they were just, not doing it yesterday, but maybe the rest of the week, maybe it gets better. So want to keep the optimism there for Yankees fans. But I will say that the Red Sox are better at this point in the year, which I don't think anybody would have forecasted.
Alex Cora, AL MVP. Don't even give him manager there, just give him MVP.
It's almost like Alex Cora is good at his job, right? I mean, obviously you could say, oh, well, he cheated in Houston. Yeah, he did, but maybe he cheated in Boston. Yeah, but he also has an impact on the clubhouse because they're clearly not cheating this year that we know of. And he really turned around that team quickly. So, I don't know.
Do you have anything before we close out for the week that pops your tarts? You did last week that you wanted to get out. Do you have anything this week?
Not really. No. Do you have any Lego sets that you're going to destroy while you on live radio, or are you good this week? Did you build the town center?
No, I'm not. I got to wait. I got to figure out where I'm going to put that before I actually construct it. It's also not like the White House where it's just like 3 separate things that I can just detach. Like it seems like a bunch of a bunch of things I'd have to be aware of. I did break down the White House into just 3 separate pieces. I've put that into storage, aka my closet. So that is no longer on my desk, but it'll be easy to just, as I said, 3 separate pieces, just put them down together when I find a place to put it. But no, as of right now, you got a new Lego set though, because I don't have anything that pops my tarts, but you got a new Lego set last week. I did not go with you on the trip that you asked me to go with you on the podcast, but you did make the trek and you did get one of the biggest boxes I have ever seen. So congratulations.
Do you want me to show it? I would have to take out my headphones.
I think, right. Yeah, I kind of have to do it now. So Matt will take out his headphones.
Do you want to? It's a Daily Bugle, 3,722 pieces. One of the top 5 tallest Lego sets ever. It's from Spider-Man, for those who don't know. So let me take off my headphones. So Ryan's going to have to talk and describe the box for those listening, and I'll be right back.
Yeah, so I kind of had to do this. If you're watching the video version, this will be great. The audio version, I don't know how this will be, but he's going to get the box now. I wish I had to do a double take. There it is. So now he's back. You can see just how this is a big unit right here. 3,700 pieces. There it is. Oh, he's got the width too. It's got a lot of girth to this thing too. Look at how big that is. That is just incredible. Like I can't imagine. Like that's a big unit right there, that Daily Bugle. So he made the trek, got that all himself, which was great. And there it is, the Daily Bugle.
I couldn't hear what you were saying. I hope you were saying good things about my big purchase.
It'll be a surprise for you when you go back and listen to it. So that was So that's we had to show that off. Once I talked about how girthy the boy was, we had to show that on camera for those that watch the video version.
And surprisingly, Ryan, that's not the biggest box of a Lego set that I've purchased before, because that would be of the Death Star that's currently blocked by my microphone right now. But the Death Star was a bigger box. I want to say the Mos Eisley Cantina was a bit. You still have not watched Star Wars, so you don't know any of the stuff that I'm talking about right now. But the Cantina was a bigger box too, so that's probably number 3 in terms of box size.
No, I have not been watching Star Wars. Jersey Shore, I've been on a Jersey Shore kick. This is like a good time of year to kind of go through it. I feel like the unofficial start of summer. So I'm on Jersey Shore kick. Jersey Shore Family Vacation comes back this Thursday, so it's almost Jersey again, which I have not been watching that as much, but maybe I'll get into it this year. We'll see if I watched it before our senior year of college, and then I just lost track of time, so I wasn't able to watch it. But yeah, so that is something that you will be watching. Eventually, you're going to be watching Jersey Shore at some point. So that'll be exciting to talk about on the podcast. I'm sure that Glen is going to be very excited to listen to your takes. I will be as well. But I don't have anything that pops my tarts, so I think that was a good way to end the episode, showing the big boy box for the Daily Bugle that's over 3,700 pieces. That is a lot of pieces.
Yeah, so the Death Star was over 4,000. So again, not the biggest that I've built before, but they're nice. They take up like a whole month of your time. It's great. You do a little bag, a little portion every day. The bigger ones are a good investment.
Well, that's a great way to stop here, just over 70 minutes. So we want to thank you all for listening to our episode this week. We'll be back next week for another episode of Best Available Podcast. Thank you for listening.